Morning, sweeties! I'm Eric Urias, and today we're going to be talking about tournaments EARTHBOUND in Master Duel. Except I'm on Duel because I just like the side deck feature, you know? It's shocking that I haven't ever featured tournaments EARTHBOUND on my channel ever, in spite of playing it a lot in the past, like in a year ago or so, and also just because it is one of the two OG good EARTHBOUND variants alongside Runic, and in Master Duel it still keeps its strengths. Like, it aged pretty well with new support, added cards, and really fun tools you can just play in the variant. And well, since I haven't ever talked about it before, let's explain it. Note that I will not be covering anything about TCG and especially OCG tournaments because those variants are very different compared to Master Duel because of the lack of Kit Kalos and the addition of Perle Reina, and also because in the OCG tournaments it's hit so hard, it's really hard to even think of making a tournaments EARTHBOUND deck at all. So let's begin. How does this work? Well, you would probably know if you know me from other places and such, but I really like the Tournament's Grief package, which is just 3 Grief, 1 Shiren, and that's really it to try and make Gremlina for free after you get disrupted, as Shiren just being a great extender to go along with your tuners and such. And well, that is the main synergistic component you have in this variant. This variant focuses a lot on trying to use your tournaments to mill and then to go into Gremlina, into whatever you need for Kraken into Ryzeal, or just the Griffin plays, or even Red Nova into Kraken and whatever. And yeah, it's really cool, I feel. So what does EARTHBOUND do for tournaments other than just leeching off of it? Well, EARTHBOUND actually does pull its weight a little. The main synergy here, of course, is Kraken adding Ryzeal, which can get you Tournament's Kashtira for additional milling. You can summon Visas Amritara really easily, which can get you all of your tournament spell traps, which includes Grief for full tournaments, or just any of your traps for additional sealing. And of course, EARTHBOUND has a pretty easy 1-card combo into tournaments. That, well, not really into tournaments, but it just adds tier cash and makes use of tournaments. So like, and also it can be used in the middle of your combo in case you need additional extension with Grief or Meta Noise. So essentially the line is, if you start Keeper or Sweeper. Keeper, grab Sweeper, summon Ryzeal. Ryzeal pitches a spell trap, grabs Azamina Elzad, summon Elzad, make Amritara, grab Grief or Meta Noise if you're in the middle of the combo, grab Sinful Spoils of White Forest, and if you used this as your 1-card combo starter, you can go Grief into Halfness, into Gremlina. Gremlina can grab Sweeper into Vision, into Griffin revive something, and then use Gaia to add Nova, and then use Sinful Spoils of White Forest to fuse into Kraken for Ryzeal. And if you start with Sweeper, you just directly use Nova to grab Nova, and then use Sinful Spoils of White Forest for Kraken anyways. Getting Ryzeal into tier cash can also, in this line, also lets you use Visas Amritara to pop Tournament's Kashtira for 2 additional mills, which is pretty nice. And if you use this in the middle of in a tournament's line, for example, you just are able to get Griffin online and then summon Keeper into Sweeper, you can just do this and grab Meta Noise. And the grabbing Meta Noise is pretty cool. You know, it's basically additional extension, really. and is a disrupt on its own. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but this build is fully geared up to just go first, delete your opponent, and if you go second against a fair deck, you try to overwhelm them. Hence why the Maxi and the triple attack, and also the Ash Blossom for Maxi. Against Malice, which is thankfully getting hit on the ban list really soon. Against Malice, what I used to do was to just go next. Yeah, you have no game going second against Malice. You can pretend you do, but every time I did, I just either lost or they didn't set up anything great, anything good, or mostly because of Maxi or a very well-timed Ash Blossom. Well, this deck has a lot of gas. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it has a bunch of bricks, which, well, that isn't wrong with Brilliant Fusion as such, and it is really capable of pushing through disrupts. And speaking of Brilliant Fusion, this card is beyond insane. This is not me overhyping it. This is just way too good. It makes Kid Kalos using Havness plus Nepi into Amethyst. Then you use Havness, train Nepi, summon Nepi, use an Amethyst to make Kid Kalos. Kid Kalos, chain block with Nepi. Well, it's not like your opponent can't really do anything about it, because if they have Ash, they would just Ash Brilliant Fusion, but regardless, you grab Hollow Core. Kid Kalos can grab Rhino Heart to go and just go nuts from there. If you mill out an Earthbound, you can use the Shiren you mill off of Rhino Heart to make Gremlina, and then go for your Earthbound plays using Hollow Core, and then you also have a Nepirem on board to be used for Visas Amritara or Don Dragster. Just one singular Brilliant Fusion just gets you so much value, it's absurd. And like, if you drew an Earthbound, you can just make Rule Kalos and then go with your Earthbound plays, which is really insane. Usually though, you will start with your Earthbound plays to try to bait out a disruption. It is kinda sad that Earthbounds are mostly used to bait for Brilliant Fusion, but like, it's guaranteed Kid Kalos, unlike Earthbounds. Like, why would you not do that? Also, Hollow Core is just a really nice body. I was considering playing additional Hollow Core because it does get you full combo with your tier stuff. Like, you can go Keeper into Walker into Harmonic, Harmonic, Walker, and the Hollow into Baron and Gremlina. Gremlina add Sweeper into Vision. Summon Griffin, Revive Sweeper, add Gaia, adds Nova. And then you use a Keeper plus Sweeper into Ryzeal, and Ryzeal gets you everything. You can literally just grab Grief, and then use it to pitch Havness, and you already have an Aqua Engrave with Sapphire, which is really cool. So that is the main gist of the deck. It's pretty simple. You just need to maneuver it fairly well into disruptions and know which cards to use as bait or which cards to normal summon. Usually I will start, usually if I have two conflicting normal summons, I will start with the Tearlaments because they're more reliable. And if I mill at Tearlaments, I can still just summon Gremlina with them anyways. It's not like the Earthbounds in hand are actually dead cards. And there's a much that is interesting in the extra deck except for exactly Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. This guy comes up a lot to be sent off of Red Nova to summon Kraken. Like, it does come up a lot. And like, for example, if I summon Gremlina and I don't have a normal summon, so I can't use Keeper, and I don't even have a Keeper in rotation, I could grab Sweeper into Scarlight into Nova, then use Nova to make Kraken, or just summon Keeper into Walker. Like, you can, that is literally just free, pretty much. And speaking of Nova, funnily enough, his main use case isn't even to be used as Scarlight. His main use case is just to be a name you can search with Crimson, an Earthbound you can search with Crimson Gaia, so that you can use Symphos White Forest with. Because you really need the additional name in a ton of lines, and whilst he's a brick, it's fine usually. Like, he's still an Earthbound you can fuse with a tier to make Grimlina anyways, so it's not like horrible. And now we can talk about some things I want to change about the deck, maybe, and some additional options you could play. First of all, in the replays you will see Croco Dragon over Levilazabul. Here I put Levilazabul because I feel like he will come up a little more than Croco, but I've summoned the Croco Dragon with 2 non-tuners a lot throughout my games and such. So I'm not really sure which one is better to play over the other or something. But they're both really powerful, it just depends on your matchups, I suppose. I don't know a lot about Mitsurugi, which is coming soon, but if Mitsurugi has cards on their board that are a bit tricky to out, which I'm pretty sure they don't, like, they're really outable boss monsters, their strength just comes from them having really strong effects. But still, like, Levilazabul, depending on the meta, would be better than Croco Dragon's reliability, so who knows. I think Croco Dragon is a little bit better, yeah. Also, these 2 cards, Heartbeat and Scream. Like, most Tearlaments variants really want the additional ceiling these 2 provide, but honestly I'm not sure about playing Heartbeat at all. Just because you do have a lot of ceiling already, and you also have Amritara to search your traps earlier on in the combo, so you don't need to do rely on Heartbeat to recoup to grab your traps later on in the combo. And same goes with Scream, I suppose. You could cut these for maybe more extension, for example Dispersion or the Strudel, but I'm not really sure. I don't know Tearlament's Fury outside of a basic understanding of it, and especially a understanding of how Tearlament's Earthbound works. I don't know much else beyond that, so yeah. And speaking of Dispersion, this card doesn't really matter a whole bunch. It is used to grab Holocore, and that's its whole purpose. I used to play it when I used to play Seraphinite, because that gives you the Holocore negate engraved online before your 4th summon, which is really nice. But after I realized Seraphinite lines aren't good at all, I just dropped Dispersion, and that was it. If you want additional extension, you can just play additional Holocore. Dispersion is also like, you know, UR, which is big yikes, you know. So like you spare a couple of bucks just by playing additional Holocore. And speaking of Seraphinite, when I first started Fury crafting for this variant, I really thought that Seraphinite was gonna be really good because of the line I said earlier. You can go from Brilliant Fusion, pitch Holocore and Nepi, summon Seraphinite, revive Nepi, Nepi grab Dispersion, Dispersion grab another Holocore, Holocore send Sapphire, and you have Holocore, Sapphire, and Dispersion engrave to use Holocore's negate so that you're immune to Nibiru, and then you go Keeper Walker and such. But in reality, what is best is to just play Amethyst and use your Earthbounds as bait. And even if you use your Earthbounds as bait, it's not really a big deal because just Keeper on board is still pretty good because you can use a Griffin and such. So like, Seraphinate sounds really fancy and cool, but in reality it just doesn't matter much, frankly. The line does go through Ryzeal and Grief to let you summon Kid Kalos, but again, why do that when you could instead just summon Kid Kalos directly with Brilliant Fusion? And this Trudeau, which I mentioned earlier, I am not sure about this package. Like, the main issue is just the Struder is a good extender in use in normal tournaments, pure, essentially, because it's a tuner in a deck filled of non-tuners. But with Earthbound, half your normal summons and such are gonna be tuners. So like the Struder not extending through that is a little bit awkward. And also you don't really need many male Wincons, male ceiling raisers, whatever you wanna call them, because your main goal is to get your Earthbounds and such. And well, your Earthbounds do give you a ton of ceiling. Then Earthbound Fusion. This is way better in a variant that does not play Brilliant Fusion and instead plays Dangers. And that's because Earthbound Fusion is only really good if you have a big mass of dark monsters in addition to your Earthbounds, and you don't and you have your Tearlaments as a bonus target, since you can summon Kid Kalos with that. But Kid Kalos should only be a bonus, and in this variant you aren't playing many Darks, and if you really want to play additional Darks, it's gonna be pretty awkward, frankly, because none of them are as good as just the Brilliant Fusion package, really. So I wouldn't recommend the Earthbound Fusion. I would, in this variant specifically, with Brilliant Fusion and such. Because, well, the Danger variant is just better at using them, and the Danger variant is worse than Brilliant Fusion, so like, don't. And also, Guardian Chimera is here because it's a good summon off of Earthbound Fusion going second, but Earthbound Fusion doesn't contribute that much going first, and all you need is Gas Turbo, and Brilliant Fusion does that job already. So Guardian Chimera just kind of sits here. And then we have Draco Stapelia. Draco Stapelia is a card I've considered a lot of times over Kaleido Heart. I'm not sure which one is better to play. Both of them fill out different roles, and it's hard to compare them. Draco Stapelia is easier to summon here with stuff like Gremlina, and on your opponent's turn you can use Sinful Spoils of White Forest. You do this play a lot, where you don't need Sinful Spoils of White Forest, so you just set it for your opponent's turn, and then you go Griffin into Keeper Walker, grab a spell in deck to deck Finn, and then use Sinful Spoils of White Forest for Kraken. Or you could Griffin into Gremlina, add anything, then use Sinful Spoils of White Forest to make Draco Stapelia. And so Sinful Spoils of White Forest does let you make Draco Stapelia easily, but Kaleido Heart is more easily made with Tearlaments and is usually more powerful because grind game, and just the targeting effect being an additional different effect, different interrupt, I suppose, and it's also more layered with your traps and such, but it's a little more awkward to summon, essentially. Like you can summon Draco Stapelia way more often, so I'm not really sure which one is better to play, and you can't really cut anything in this extra deck, except for maybe SP Little Knight, but she's just way too reliable a lot of the times. I think SP Little Knight is worth cutting, though, really. You could play Draco Stapelia here. Next on the list of things to talk about is Muddy Madragon. This is also another card that's just way better in the danger variant, because you have a Tsuchinoko, which is an easy card to use to summon Mud Dragon with Walker, and also in that variant you don't have as many slots clogged up, so you can just justify Grapha Overlord, which can be used with tournaments and such to go nuts. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend it in this variant, especially since Ryzeal kinda took Mud Dragon's spot as your turn 1 level 6 Synchro, since she gets you any tournament spell trap. And that is really strong, you know, and also doesn't require a second extra deck slot to be useful. Then we have Gremlin. Gremlin is serviceable, going second in a simplified game state, which in this variant you don't find yourself in a lot of because you play less hand traps and such. So Gremlin isn't as all reliable, so I wouldn't recommend them, but like, he's fine on turn 3. The problem is, on turn 3, your opponent is already dead, and the Gremlin doesn't really have a job after that. So I wouldn't recommend the Gremlin, really. Ancient Fairy Dragon. This is only good in the TCG, straight up. You could make an argument to cut Dawn Dragster for this, but there is no field spell to profit off of, and that's really it. In the TCG, you can grab Pearl Arena into Ryzeal, into Dragon Ravine, I suppose, even into Despia if you're playing that for Kraken, I suppose. But Ancient Fairy Dragon just isn't worth it in Master Duel. It's worth it in TCG. And also, speaking of Despia, this just made me realize Muddy Mud Dragon isn't half bad in the TCG also, because you don't have Kid Kalas. You can summon Rule Kalas or Grapha Overlord, a little bit better, to have an Omni-Negator to use. Then we have Dugaris. Dugaris is an interesting one. He's mainly summoned off of a Nepi, which is Scent of Brilliant, since you can just grab Sapphire, normal Sapphire, which gives you a little bit more consistency. You can also use it if you have 2 tournaments names on board to then summon your Earthbounds, but I honestly just haven't had the extra deck slots for it. Maybe you could cut Accel Stardust or Croco, but you already are playing very few Synchros at this point, since half your extra deck is mandatory fusions. You could cut Draco Stapelia, of course, and such. So, but I'm not really sure. Dugaris is a really niche card. It's way better in pure tournaments where you have more free slots available. Levilazable, already talked about this. He's a really good utility card, and that's really it. You can play it over Croco Dragon or Accel Stardust. Sometimes you go into Accel Stardust for Levilazable, so it gets awkward. Or just the Draco Stapelia right here. Just do what you want. SP, all reliable. Link in the grind game. And yeah, that's really it. Tournaments Earthbound is a really powerful variant that just struggles against other oppressive decks, like just decks that make a massive board and don't let you play. Against something like pure Ryzeal, going second is way more fair, but this deck just doesn't play fair going first anyway, so like it's a fair enough downside. So I haven't made a replay video in a while, so I haven't said this in a while, but enjoy the replays.